Welcome to the Silverstone Technology Cluster's Ask the Expert podcast. I'm Jeannie, your host. The mission of the STC is to support advanced engineering, electronics and software businesses, and we're always keen to share industry knowledge and insights. In each podcast episode, we sit down with seasoned professionals and industry leaders to uncover valuable knowledge, share real-world experiences, and explore smart strategies for navigating the challenges of modern business in advanced engineering. This episode is brought to you by Total Materia, the most comprehensive material database that contains information for more than 450 materials. Okay, so today I'm joined by James Whitelock from Thinkincircles. Thank you for joining me today, James.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for asking me for a start. You know,
Of course.
It's funny to be on the other side of this, right? Because you probably know that I do a bit of podcasting. So this is like having the tables turned on me. So you're asking all the questions and I've got to come up with the clever answers now, basically.
Well, I appreciate you going out on a limb for us.
You're welcome.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about EVPs. Can you just tell me what they are to start with?
Yeah. So if you're a kind of business owner and you're looking to kind of grow your business, you want to create a great company culture, you probably want to think about what we call in my space an EVP, which is an employee value proposition. And that's why your business should attract people to work for you in the first place, right? What are the benefits? What's the core message? What's the culture? What are these things that are going to draw people into you? What's the kind of talent that you want to attract? Why do they want to come to you? Will they come to you? And why would they want to stay with you? Why do you want to kind of retain that kind of talent as well? So it's the kind of the first building blocks of building that kind of company culture that you want your business to look like to the outside world, basically.
Okay, so I guess in the climate that we're in at the moment, it's so important for employers to be attractive to employees.
Right. Well, it's difficult to find the good talent at the best of times, right? So if that's one thing that kind of businesses will be struggling with, and you know, something I saw a stat, it costs maybe like for a mid-level manager style position, if you make the wrong hire, it can cost like £50,000.
Wow.
Right. In just attracting them, in training them, in onboarding them, in salary, all of that kind of stuff, right? So one way you can try and kind of avoid some of this is by being clear on the kind of business you are, and the business culture you want to create, and the kind of people you want to come work for you by developing this kind of employee value proposition. So it is to attract that right talent, and partly also to maybe dissuade the talent you don't want to work for you. You'll know that kind of in the area that we work in here, in kind of in this advanced engineering, talent can be hard to find. Talent can be also difficult to retain. One of the problems there is that kind of transparency and honesty, piece. So EVP is a real kind of process of brutal kind of transparency that a lot of businesses probably need to go through. It's like, why do you think people are staying with you? That's kind of a good place to start. And why are people not staying with you? What makes you attractive around here in Silverstone? We've got lots of big kind of Formula One motorsport brands that people are dying to work with. But actually, we know it's not all that kind of. It's not the sometimes it's not the best working environment, and it has a lot of churn in that talent. So if you're a bit more kind of transparent from the start, like, it's long hours, it's going to be weekends, you're away from your family. Those are the kind of stuff which I think some businesses are afraid to kind of talk around, and maybe even blatantly make up and lie, all right? If your EVP is much more transparent, then you definitely got in a position where you're going to attract the right kind of people who don't mind working long hours, who don't mind because they're going to park everything else because they want to work for your brand for the next kind of couple of years. However, that someone's going to kind of stay with you.
So taking it right back to basics,
Yep.
Where do businesses start with developing an effective and a strong EVP?
You start with what's kind of already going on within your business, right? You ask around, right? You can ask simple questions like, what attracted you to this, to work for this company in the first place? What is keeping you at this business? What are the things you like? What are the things you don't like? So it's kind of a survey process, and that'll give you the employee's kind of perspective, and then you can kind of either do it yourself, work with your HR teams, your training teams, if you've got employer branders and EVP people in-house, then you can start to kind of like figure out, is that what we want to be known for? Is that where we are? Or do we want to shift that? And so let's create an EVP that over time can shift that kind of perception internally and externally. So it's that review kind of piece, basically. It's almost like a kind of a survey of, what people enjoy, what people don't enjoy, expect, again, brutal answers.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're empowering kind of people who respondents to the survey to give kind of feedback that's kind of transparent themselves, and they're not going to kind of be made scapegoats, right? You make it basically anonymous, right, at this point, and you make sure that it definitely is anonymous. People aren't going to get any kind of comeback from their feedback. And once they feel kind of comfortable, they're probably more likely to say, yeah, you might get people who just have a bit of a chip on their shoulder, or you're going to get that. But generally, you're going to get an idea, and you can then maybe see trends and patterns in all of that, and you might see something in the that a lot of employers really kind of like or enjoy. It could be you've got some kind of flexible working hours, but you just had that, and you never really thought that was a particularly attractive. So that could be part of that EVP. There could be other things you thought were really great. You might have, I don't know, free gym membership, but in it you find that no one's actually using it and no one cares about it, and it's just like, oh, okay, that's not something we necessarily want to kind of advertise or shout about. Not that necessarily an EVP is kind of just a list of benefits. It should be more of a statement, right, of intention of what you want to do. You want to do this, and this is how you want to be kind of seen, and this is kind of how you want the outside world and what you want talent to be attracted to you for. But part of that can be some kind of like things you drop in around benefits, working hours, those kinds of stuff, diversity, inclusion, all that kind of stuff is now, very much seen in the kind of the talent space as being something that people will probably want to know about before they join your business.
Okay, so you're talking a little bit about people who already work there rather than new hires. And if you're trying to implement an EVP and trying to reassess and make some changes, how do you sell that internally to people that are already there? Because they know what it's like, and you say, okay, this is what it's like, but this is what we want it to be like. How does that work? Because I imagine that's a challenge.
It completely, right? Yeah, I mean, it's about taking them on that journey with you, right? Yeah, again, it comes down to that kind of honesty, saying, right, we know we're not perfect, but this is where we want to be, right? And I think people will give you a certain amount of grace around that. And as long as they're seeing changes that you want to kind of go in that direction, those might be tiny little changes around maybe working hours, flexible working from home, that kind of stuff, holiday, I don't know, giving people their birthday off as a holiday, those kind of things. If those are part of the things that people are asking for and you see that's going to make a change, you start to implement those kind of things, and you're honest, like say there might be something really big in this, like, you know what, we can't give everybody in the business medical because we're just not big enough at this point. I think you're going to get a lot of kind of like leeway with those businesses, and as long as everybody is on the bus, right? To kind of Jim Collins in his book, right? It's and that means like from the top down as well. So everybody's you're right. That buying at the top. This is where that went, and it all needs to be driven from the top. And you tend to find some of the businesses that have got really good kind of company cultures, but maybe not have necessarily an EVP, but they've probably got the basis of what they could be a decent EVP, is all being driven from the top, right? They've got a founder, owner, someone who started the business, and their ethos was pretty transparent, and their ethos was quite kind of liberal maybe, and it all kind of filters down through the business eventually, and that work ethic kind of comes across. So yeah, it has to be driven from the top, and it also has to be seen that the top are also living the dream as well as kind of actually selling it to everybody else. So, whatever they're saying, your employers have got to see that you're actually doing it as well.
So it's just constantly reviewing, really, when you're rolling out these changes. You're seeing how they land, you're seeing what's happening, and constantly reviewing.
And again, you can kind of there's all kinds of tech these days that can put that kind of stuff in place to kind of continually kind of nudge people and give people a push just to kind of give you some little bits of feedback. And you start to just kind of make sure you're gathering all of that, and over time that just kind of builds out what the kind of sentiment across your business. That might not necessarily always go into affecting what your EVP kind of statement is, but it does give you a better kind of company culture. Or it might be vice versa. You might want to kind of start to implement that kind of stuff in your EVP. As I said, really, if you look at some of these big brands and how, what their EVP, I can't remember like Apple's off the top of my head, but it's literally like a paragraph, right? Yeah. And it's literally like a kind of statement. And it's literally a kind of like an ethos that they try to work kind of towards. So they don't get necessarily down into the nitty gritty of it. But there's definitely, they'll have something in place in that business to kind of continually get feedback on employee sentiment and that kind of thing, and to make sure that their EVP is still in line with what the kind of sentiment of their employees.
Yeah, so that brings me really nicely into the next question, because I'm thinking about your EVP as like you trying to sell your business and show people why they should want to work there.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, you've got what the real experience is from the people that are working there. So how is it that you get, because we've got websites like Glassdoor and all of that where people go on and they find out what it's actually like to work there from people who have worked there.
Yep.
How do we make the employees the advocates for your business? Because I guess that's where the voice is getting out, because you can say all day long, this is our EVP, this is what we're doing, this is what we want to be, this is how we want our culture. But in actual fact, the people, who can really speak from experience, they're the ones we need to hear from.
Yeah, and it's a great point. And it's kind of like, if you've got yourself an EVP, the next kind of layer of that is like how you shout to the rest of the world about that, which we usually class as kind of employer branding. And a separate offshoot of employer branding is employer advocacy, which is what we're kind of like. And advocacy is like, how do you identify and find the people within your business who can shout the loudest about how great you are to work there, right? If you come back to something like Glassdoor, tends to be made up of people who've got a bit of a grudge.
Yes,
right?
Of course.
All right. So like any people who leave reviews, there's always kind of
they always leave a negative review before they leave a positive.
It's easier to leave a negative review than a positive
definitely.
review. So there's a bit of a thing around Glassdoor and those kind of like how much is actually, but you can anyway. But yeah, so if you want to build like employee advocacy kind of into your system, one is you just kind of you from the kind of these surveys, you identify the people who are just more engaged, right? And hopefully that's a cross section of people across your business, from all the way up to senior management and C-suite, all the way down to people maybe working in a warehouse, right? Yep. People who are a bit more engaged, people who kind of also maybe have an understanding of kind of social media and those kind of things. You can quite easily kind of train people in to do this. We've worked with businesses where we've kind of put advocacy programs in place where you identify the kind of people who are really switched on, who really love kind of working there, have got a lot to say, might not necessarily have the skills to kind of do it on social. So you can, again, build out a program where you're giving them some content, you're giving them the help to kind of put that kind of content out there. You help them to be more confident on video. You kind of like find ways of doing that so you can kind of put everything in place to empower them to help you be as good a brand as possible, and for them to shout about your kind of brand as much as possible. But you do have to kind of identify them first. And when we're doing it, it's kind of, as I said, it's that broad thing. You don't just want the guys in marketing, because they're the ones who love being on camera, right?
And they're the ones everyone's expecting to hear from.
Exactly. That's why you want to try and get more of a broad kind of spectrum. It's very important to have people at the top. If you haven't got a kind of a CEO or an MD that's kind of engaging, that's really important, because that helps, because that, again, drive from the top. But, when we've done it, we've tried to get someone from the finance team, or from, again, literally like all working in the warehouse, who can just kind of give you, because, again, when you're hiring, you're not just hiring into the parts of the business where it shout the loudest. You want, there's actually probably more important places. It might be you need a credit controller or something like that, right? Not particularly sexy, but you still need that. And they want to work in an environment that they kind of feel comfortable in. So employee advocacy is where they can possibly see the kind of people they might be working with at your business, the kind of personalities, the kind of things that their day-to-day role might be, the benefits of what they do kind of as part of the kind of the culture around work. All that kind of stuff can be shouted out. And also the kind of knowledge that they're imparting as well. So that's the employee advocacy piece can be really important to kind of get your EVP out there. And it can be crucial, in fact.
It's quite interesting, because you've got companies that build their brand for their customers.
Yep.
But what we're talking about here is companies building their brand for their employees.
Yep.
So what we're talking about social media a little bit, and you mentioned that. What trends do you see changing? What do you see on the horizon with EVPs?
It's. I think more people are going to kind of understand what it means and kind of take more notice of it, even if they aren't necessarily putting it down on paper. I think there's so many more businesses realise that attracting talent and looking like you're a great place to work is important to their customer base, i.e. their clients, as much as it is to their employee base, right? Businesses want to work with mirrors of themselves, and they want to work with businesses that are B Corp or something like that, right? So if you can kind of come across as a great place to work, clients are going to say, these are the kind of people that we want to align with as well, right? So having that is what you're going to see more of, is actually maybe your clients being more demanding on you to be that mirror as well as them, right? So I think that's definitely a trend. From a kind of a social media kind of perspective and how you get that message out there, it's just staying on top of the different audiences you want to get. So if you're a business and you're employing more and more Gen Z or Gen Alpha, right? Yeah, you probably need to be on TikTok. You do need to be on the spaces where they're hanging out. We're seeing this more and more often with the clients that we're working with. It's like there's this younger generation moving into the workforce, and there's some great talent out there. And you're just gonna kind of go to them as opposed to them finding you.
Yes.
So that's where kind of TikTok and things like that is starting to kind of play its role. And actually, there's some great businesses kind of doing that kind of thing out there. Some big businesses out there who kind of got their advocates on there. There's recruitment agencies are kind of moving into there. We're kind of on there. Those kind of things. So there's definitely kind of going where your audience is to speak to them on their terms, as it were.
Yeah, it's really interesting how TikTok's kind of making its way into that space. I was speaking to someone who runs marketing for a school, and the sixth formers, they put them in charge of a TikTok page because they were like, by the time they're getting to sixth form, they're choosing where they want to go, and we want to be attractive to them, and this is how we connect with them, which 10 years ago, that would have just been outrageous. And now it's funny how those platforms are moving into this space.
Well, that's not necessarily employee advocacy. You could call that student advocacy, right? I mean, it's kind of the same kind of thing.
Same kind of thing.
It's the same principle. They're using it to attract the same talent and same quality of talent that they've already that they're losing from this kind of outgoing generation. So that's a great example, and can quite easily be transferred into a kind of corporate environment, right? And TikTok actually, I think there's a lot of people kind of deride it, whether it's going to be banned here, whether it's going to use it or not. It is one of those places with God knows how many kind of billions of users now that it's difficult to kind of and hard to ignore, even if you're just on there. And actually, it's not just people kind of singing songs or miming to songs or that kind of stuff. We've worked with kind of education kind of providers who've kind of got a lot of kind of stuff on there, who've got their own teachers to become advocates, who go on there and build their own networks and things like that. Great for that kind of stuff. TikTok has got its own kind of like educational kind of teaching platform almost built into it as well. So if you are a modern business and that is the kind of generation you are struggling to bring on board, or if you're looking for apprentices or something like that, that's probably where you want to be kind of looking. Then it's kind of like, but you can also, there's Instagram and there's YouTube and there's all kinds of places, Reddit or those kind of places that people just don't think of as a platform to find and attract talent, where actually probably the right kind of talent is hang out. So, if you're a tech business, i.e. kind of software tech business, why you not got some kind of presence on Reddit, right? Defies me, because that's, probably where a lot of your people are possibly hanging out, right? And asking these questions and that kind of thing. So again, as part of it is going where your audience is.
And understanding what your audience is. And I guess that all comes back to making an EVP that reflects your business, so you know who you're trying to attract.
Exactly, right? I mean, it will break down, right? You are, if you're looking for people within kind of senior management or middle management, you're probably not going to be looking on TikTok, right? But, there's a place that might be more, you might be the more kind of similar to like an SEO campaign to attract people directly to your company pages and your career pages and highlight stuff there, so you kind of draw them in there, as opposed to doing lots and lots of stuff for that kind of generation out on social media. That's a sweeping generalization. I get it, right?
Yes,
I know,
of course.
But as a kind of like some broad headlines, that's maybe the way you would want to kind of go about that. So, but that actually falls more into employer branding. So, one thing that I think kind of sometimes is kind of conflated is what's the difference between EVP, employee value proposition, and employer branding. So EVP is the statement, it's the reason why. Employer branding is the how you're getting how you're getting out there. And the employer branding strategy might be, right, we want to talk to this type of people who are perfect for this kind of role, and that's where we're going to talk to them on that channel, that platform. And then vice versa, you do that for all the different parts of your business potentially, and work with your kind of talent acquisition teams or your recruitment agencies and kind of and build it that way. So that's kind of how you might kind of structure that if you were kind of going to go about that as a business listening to this.
Okay, brilliant. So, I mean, that's really interesting. I've learned something today, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And you've done really well sitting on the other side of the table.
I'm used to talking. I think that's what it is as well, right?
Well, you've done a good job.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
And obviously, this is something that you offer at Thinkincircles.
Yeah. So we're a recruitment marketing and employer branding agency. So businesses that want to know more about this and interested in this kind of way of branding their business, we can definitely kind of work with them on a consultative basis. We can actually kind of roll this stuff out. depending on, how that kind of size of business depends on the kind of how much kind of they might want to kind of work with us. But if it's a small business and you just want to get started, just want to know kind of more about what we do, then we can help in that way with some consultation, or we can literally kind of run the entire kind of project for you as well.
Okay, well, that's brilliant. I mean, I can link to your profile page on the STC website in the show notes. So if anyone does want to get in touch, they can just click there and send you an email.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really, really brilliant, and I've really enjoyed it. And I think we've kind of covered all bases here, haven't we?
Yeah, you know what? I could probably talk for hours about this kind of stuff, right? But nobody wants that. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been really good. Thank you so much, James.
Cheers.
Take care. That's it for this episode of Ask the Expert. Thank you so much for listening or watching. We hope you picked up some useful insights and inspiration along the way. If you enjoyed the conversation, please give us a like, share or rating on the platform you're using. Please follow Silverstone Technology Cluster on LinkedIn and subscribe to the STC YouTube channel or our podcast on Spotify or Apple, so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you, so if you have any comments, a particular topic or a guest you'd love to hear from, please drop me an email to jeannie@silverstonetechnologycluster.com. Bye for now.